This story is 100% fiction. All elements are imaginary. Coincidences with reality are accidental. But 18. Entertainment only. This story is 100% fiction. All elements are imaginary. Coincidences with reality are accidental. But 18. Entertainment only. The blood on Stefano Corsetti's white collar was still fresh when he walked into the Empire Club's private meeting room. Rose Montgomery froze with her champagne glass halfway to her lips. She had come here to confront her father, not to witness the arrival of New York's most dangerous man looking like he'd just stepped out of a nightmare. She knew that face. God, she knew it too well. Every charity gala, every business dinner, every insufferable event where their fathers had paraded them around like prized thoroughbreds for the past 5 years. Stefano Corsetti had been there, watching her with those cold, unreadable eyes while some gorgeous brunette hung on his arm. Veronica, that was the woman's name. Rose had learned it 3 galas ago when she'd overheard 2 socialites whispering about how Stefano Corsetti's mistress wore jewelry that could buy a small island. The 3 men seated with her father, Richard Montgomery, rose in a silent show of respect. Richard himself, a man Rose had never seen bow to anyone, inclined his head. Stefano Corsetti didn't look at any of them. His dark eyes, cold as liquid steel, cut across the room and landed directly on her. The tribal tattoo that climbed the left side of his neck pulsed with each visible heartbeat in his jugular. Jaw clenched. Custom suit stained crimson. And that look, and that damned look, and that clearly said, "You shouldn't be here. Leave," he said. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. "All of you." The men began moving immediately, but Richard Montgomery raised his hand. "Stefano, my daughter isn't," I said. Stefano took 1 step forward, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "All of you." Rose should have felt fear. Any sensible person would. But the rage that had been burning in her chest since she'd discovered the truth 2 hours ago was stronger than any survival instinct. "No." She set her glass on the table harder than intended. "I'm not going anywhere until someone explains why my birth certificate has a marriage clause attached to it." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard Montgomery closed his eyes, and for a second, just 1 second, he looked like a defeated man. "Rose, sweetheart, we'll discuss this later." "After what, Dad?" "After I discover more secrets hidden in the family safe? After I find more contracts signed with my blood before I even learn to walk?" She turned to Stefano and made the mistake of looking directly at him. Up close he was even more intimidating. 13 years older, nearly a foot taller, and with the kind of presence that made the air grow scarce. But Rose was Richard Montgomery's daughter. She'd learned to play poker with Wall Street sharks before she turned 15. "And you?" She stared him down. "You knew? All this time, every gala, every dinner, every event where you stood there with Veronica on your arm while our fathers did business? You knew I was your, what? Your participation trophy?" Something flickered across Stefano's face, too fast to identify. But he didn't deny knowing Veronica's name. Didn't even flinch. "Leave the room, Rose." "No, that wasn't a request." "And yet my answer is still no." A muscle jumped in his jaw. He looked at Richard. "You said she was docile." Rose let out an incredulous laugh. "Docile? He said I was docile?" Richard ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking 10 years older. "Rose, please." "Dad, did you describe me like a show horse?" I said diplomatic. Richard looked at her with a mixture of desperation and authority. "I said you were diplomatic, well-mannered, and would understand the necessity of this arrangement when the time came." "And when exactly was that time supposed to be? On my 30th birthday? On my deathbed? Because clearly you weren't planning to tell me before I accidentally found the documents. You shouldn't have been going through my office. And you shouldn't be selling your daughter to the mafia." The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Stefano, who until now had been watching the argument with the expression of someone watching a particularly tedious television program, finally reacted. He moved. Fast. Silent. Suddenly he was between Rose and her father, blocking her view completely. "Mr. Montgomery." His voice was low, controlled, lethally calm. "Take your men. Go home. I'll handle this. Stefano, she's my daughter. And in 3 weeks, she'll be my wife." He didn't turn around. "Which means technically she's already my responsibility. Go." Rose opened her mouth to protest, but something in Stefano's posture made her hesitate. It wasn't a threat. It was something different. Something she couldn't decipher. Richard looked at his daughter for a long moment. Guilt? Regret? Rose didn't know how to read her father anymore. "Rose, Go," Dad. The words came out more tired than she intended. Just go. When the door closed behind Richard Montgomery and his men, the silence that settled was of a completely different kind. Stefano walked to the bar in the corner of the room, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, returned and placed one in front of her. Drink. I don't drink hard liquor. Today you do. Rose looked at the glass, then at him. The blood on your shirt. Whose is it? He raised his own glass to his lips, drank it in one gulp, and watched her over the rim of the crystal. Someone who asked too many questions. Rose felt a shiver run up her spine but kept her chin raised. Was that a threat? That was a fact. He set the empty glass on the table. What you make of the blood on my shirt is your problem. For a moment, they just stared at each other. The heir to the Corsetti family and the girl who had been promised to him before she learned to speak. Rose broke the silence first. You have a mistress. If the statement surprised him, he didn't show it. And? She almost laughed. I just found out I'm marrying a man who has someone else's blood on his clothes and who I've watched parade Veronica around at every event for the past 5 years. And you say and? Something shifted in his expression. Just barely. You remember her name. Hard to forget the woman who wore a ruby necklace worth more than my college tuition to a charity event for underprivileged children. Stefano crossed his arms, the tattoo on his neck stretching with the movement. You noticed her jewelry. I notice everything. Rose lifted her chin. Including the way you always positioned yourself to watch the exits, the way your men rotated every 30 minutes, the way you never touched alcohol at any event. Until tonight. For the first time, she saw genuine surprise in his eyes. It was gone in a heartbeat. And yet you never approached me. Why would I? You were always busy with her. We spoke at the Henderson Gala last spring. You said, "Excuse me," when I was blocking the bar. Forgive me for not counting that as conversation. Something almost resembling a smile passed across the corner of Stefano's mouth. Almost. You have more fire than your father led me to believe. My father clearly doesn't know much about me. Apparently not. Stefano walked to the door but stopped before opening it. So let me tell you some things he should have told you years ago. Things about why this marriage isn't a choice. For either of us. And you can hear them standing up if you prefer. But I imagine you'll want to be sitting when I explain exactly what happens to you if this wedding doesn't happen. Rose felt something icy settle in her stomach. What do you mean? Stefano sat in the chair across from her, elbows resting on his knees, hands interlocked. Suddenly, he looked tired. Sit down, Rose. Please. It was the please that made her obey. She sat, and Stefano Corsetti began to destroy every lie she had believed for 20 years. Your father isn't just an export businessman. Rose wanted to say she knew that she had suspected at least. The late-night meetings, the phone calls in languages she didn't recognize, the men in suits who appeared and disappeared like shadows. But suspecting and knowing were very different things. The Corsettis control the East Coast, Stefano continued, his voice clinical like a surgeon describing an operation. Smuggling, money laundering, protection, no drugs, no human trafficking. We have a code, but the rest? He let the sentence hang. And my father? The Montgomerys are our legal gateway. The export company? Clean on the surface, but underneath it's how we launder 80% of our profits. Rose felt nausea rising. So my father is a criminal. Stefano didn't hesitate. Like me, like my father, like you'll be if you stay. If I stay? She gripped the edge of the chair. Are you giving me a choice? No. He looked at her directly. I'm giving you the illusion of a choice because I prefer you to think you had options when you accept. It's less problematic. You're careful with your words, Rose. I'm still your future husband. I'd rather die than marry you. The air changed. Stefano rose slowly, walked to her, crouched until their faces were at the same level. Don't say that. His voice was low, almost soft, and for that reason absolutely terrifying. Never say that. Because the alternative to marrying me isn't freedom, Rose. The alternative is disappearing, and not in the sense of running off to Europe and starting a new life. He straightened up. Your father borrowed money from mine. A lot of money, 20 years ago. And the collateral for that loan was you. Rose felt the world spin. No. If this marriage doesn't happen, the Corsetti rivals will see it as weakness. They'll see your father as a man who doesn't keep his promises. And they'll come after him. Stefano looked at her without pity. And after you. I could run. The Vasilyevs have eyes in 60 countries. You wouldn't make it to the airport. The Vasilyevs? Rose stood, her legs unsteady. Who are the Vasilyevs? The family that wants our destruction? Stefano put his hands in his pockets, his casual posture contrasting with the gravity of his words. This marriage isn't about joining fortunes, Rose. It's about presenting a united front. It's about showing that the Corsettis have allies powerful enough to face a war. A war? She felt hysterical laughter bubbling in her chest. I was studying for my macroeconomics exam 2 hours ago, and now I'm in the middle of a war? You always were. For the first time, his voice held something resembling compassion. You just didn't know. Rose let herself fall back into the chair. Her world, the world of studies, exams, happy hours with friends, career plans, had just crumbled into a pile of rubble. And on top of that rubble stood Stefano Corsetti, looking at her with those dark eyes that promised no love, no happiness. They promised only survival. What about Veronica? She didn't know why she asked. Maybe because she needed something to hate that wasn't her own existence. After the wedding, will you keep seeing her? Stefano studied her for a long moment. Does it matter? I don't know. Rose stared at him. I'm trying to figure out exactly how big the hell is that I've just been thrown into. A sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh, but the closest thing to one she'd heard. You have more fire than your father led me to believe. My father clearly doesn't know much about me. Apparently not. Stefano walked to the door but stopped before opening it. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Tomorrow you'll come to the Corsetti mansion to meet my family. Wear something appropriate. Appropriate? My mother is a traditional woman, and my sister is, he seemed to search for the word, perceptive. You have a sister? I have an entire family, Rose. People you'll have to convince that this marriage is real. People who can't know you found out everything an hour ago. He opened the door. Smile a lot. Speak little. And for the love of everything you consider sacred, don't mention the mistress. He left. Rose remained alone in the room, surrounded by crystal glasses, furniture worth more than she wanted to think about, and the weight of a truth that had just crushed every plan she'd ever made. She picked up the whiskey Stefano had left for her, drank it in one gulp, and began to plan. Because Rose Montgomery may have been promised to a mafioso before she learned to speak, may have just discovered that her entire life was a lie, and may be about to marry a man who had a mistress and blood on his shirt. But she wasn't going to give up. If Stefano Corsetti wanted a docile bride, he was in for a very unpleasant surprise. Rose smiled at the empty glass. Let the games begin. The Corsetti mansion wasn't a house. It was a statement. Rose stepped out of the black SUV and stared at the towering structure that looked like it had been plucked from the hills of Tuscany and dropped into the most exclusive neighborhood of Long Island. Stone walls, ivy climbing ancient pillars, armed guards trying very hard to look like gardeners. You're staring. Stefano appeared beside her, looking infuriatingly perfect in a charcoal suit. No blood today. She almost missed it. At least then she'd had something concrete to hate. I'm assessing. Assessing what? Escape routes. Something flickered in his dark eyes. There are none. There are always escape routes. Rose adjusted her cream-colored dress, appropriate as requested, though she'd chosen a neckline just low enough to be interesting. You just have to know where to look. Before he could respond, the massive front doors swung open. A woman who could only be described as regal stood in the entrance, silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon, pearls at her throat, and eyes that scanned Rose like a particularly disappointing stock report. So, the woman's voice was cool. This is her mother. Stefano placed a hand on Rose's lower back, a gesture so unexpected that she nearly flinched. This is Rose Montgomery. Rose, my mother, Elisabetta Corsetti. Rose extended her hand. Mrs. Corsetti, it's a pleasure to... You're thin. Rose blinked. I'm sorry? Thin. Narrow hips. Elisabetta circled her slowly, and Rose felt distinctly like livestock at an auction. The contract requires an heir within 2 years. I expected someone more robust. Mother, there was a warning in Stefano's voice. I'm simply stating facts, figlio mio. Elisabetta stopped in front of Rose, studying her face. Pretty enough, I suppose. Good bone structure. But can she handle this family? Rose felt the familiar fire ignite in her chest. With all due respect, Mrs. Corsetti, she said, her voice steady. I've been handling powerful men my entire life. Your son doesn't scare me, and neither do you. Silence. Then, impossibly, Elisabetta Corsetti smiled. Good. She turned and walked inside. Weak women die in this family. Come. Lunch is served. The dining room could seat 30. Today, it held 5. Elisabetta took the head of the table, a position Rose noted with interest. Stefano sat to her right with Rose beside him. Across from them sat a young woman with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, and beside her an older man with silver temples and the quiet stillness of someone who had seen too much death. "My sister, Gianna," Stefano said, "and my uncle, Marco. He handles our logistics." Logistics. Rose translated that mentally to bodies. The infamous Rose Montgomery. Gianna leaned forward, her red lips curving. "I've heard so much about you." "Funny. I've heard nothing about you." Gianna's smile widened. "I like her already." "You like everyone who talks back to Stefano," Marco said dryly. "It's a low bar." "It's an important bar." Gianna picked up her wine glass. "Our brother needs someone who won't crumble every time he glares. Veronica certainly couldn't." "Gianna." Stefano's voice cut like a blade. The table went silent. Rose felt every eye turn to her, waiting for her reaction. "The mistress," mentioned casually like a weather report. She picked up her own wine glass, took a slow sip, and smiled. "I've met Veronica, actually. Lovely woman. Terrible taste in jewelry, but lovely." Gianna choked on her wine. Even Marco's lips twitched. Elisabetta studied Rose with new interest. "You knew about her?" "I know about many things, Mrs. Corsetti." Rose set down her glass. "I also know that whatever arrangement existed before me is none of my business, unless it becomes my business, which I trust it won't." She turned to Stefano, holding his gaze. "Right, darling." The muscle in his jaw ticked. "Once. Twice. Right." Gianna burst out laughing. "Oh, this is going to be fun." Lunch was an interrogation disguised as fine dining. Elisabetta asked about her education, her health, her fertility, a question Rose answered with a pointed, functioning "thank you" that made Gianna nearly spit out her pasta. Marco asked about her father's business, probing for weaknesses with the subtlety of a surgeon. Rose deflected every question, revealing nothing her father hadn't already made public. And Stefano watched, always watching, those dark eyes tracking her every movement, every word. Rose felt like a specimen under glass, and she hated how aware she was of his attention. After dessert, a tiramisu that was genuinely excellent, Elisabetta rose. "Gianna, Marco, leave us." They obeyed without question. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Elisabetta turned to Rose. "You're not what I expected. I've been hearing that a lot lately. Your father painted a picture of a quiet girl, obedient, malleable." Elisabetta's eyes hardened. "He lied. My father lies about many things. I'm learning that now. And yet you're still here." Rose felt Stefano's gaze on her profile. She didn't look at him. "I'm still here because I understand what happens if I'm not. The Vasilyevs, the war, the target on my back." She met Elisabetta's stare. "I'm not here because I want to be. I'm here because I'm not stupid." "Good." Elisabetta walked to the window, gazing out at the manicured gardens. "Because in 3 weeks, you become a Corsetti, and Corsettis don't run, Corsettis don't break, and Corsettis don't betray." She turned back. "Can you do that, Rose Montgomery? Can you stand beside my son when the blood starts flowing? Can you keep his secrets? Bear his children? Smile for the cameras while the world burns behind you?" Rose stood, slowly, deliberately. "I can do whatever I need to survive, Mrs. Corsetti. The question isn't whether I'm strong enough." She walked toward the door, then paused. "The question is whether your son is smart enough to see me as an ally instead of a prisoner." She looked at Stefano for the first time since the interrogation began. "Something to think about, darling." She walked out. She made it to the garden before he caught up. That was either very brave or very stupid. Rose didn't turn around. "I prefer strategic. You just challenged my mother in her own home. I corrected a false assumption." She finally faced him. "She thought I was weak. I'm not." Stefano stood 3 feet away, hands in his pockets, the afternoon sun casting sharp shadows across his face. The tattoo on his neck seemed darker in this light. "She also thinks you're hiding something. Everyone's hiding something." Rose tilted her head. "Including you. What really happened to the man whose blood was on your shirt yesterday?" "He tried to kill my father." The words hung between them. "And you stopped him," Rose said quietly. "I did what needed to be done." Stefano's expression didn't change. "That's what this family does. We do what needs to be done. No hesitation, no regret." "And Veronica? Is she what needs to be done too?" His jaw tightened. Veronica is your escape. Rose took a step closer, studying his face. She's the one part of your life that isn't about duty or blood or power. That's why you've kept her around. Something shifted in his eyes. Surprise? Maybe respect. You're more observant than I gave you credit for. I told you. I notice everything. She held his gaze. So here's what I noticed today. Your mother runs this family. Your sister is loyal but rebellious. Your uncle has killed for you, and would again. And you, she paused. You hate this life almost as much as I hate being forced into it. Silence. The garden was quiet except for birdsong and the distant sound of guards on patrol. You don't know anything about me, Stefano finally said. I know you didn't want this marriage either. Rose's voice softened. I know you looked at me yesterday with something that wasn't cruelty. It was resignation. I know that underneath all that control, you're as trapped as I am. She took another step closer. So here's my proposal, Stefano Corsetti. We can spend the next 50 years making each other miserable, or we can be honest about what this is and find a way to survive it together. He stared at her. You're proposing an alliance. I'm proposing we stop pretending we're enemies when the real enemy is already at the gates. She extended her hand. Partners, not lovers, not friends, just two people trying to survive a war neither of us started. Stefano looked at her hand, then at her face. And Veronica? Rose's expression didn't waver. End it before the wedding, publicly, or I walk, and we both know what happens then. A long pause. Then Stefano Corsetti, heir to the most powerful crime family on the East Coast, took her hand. Partners. Rose smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. 3 days before the wedding, Rose watched Stefano break up with his mistress. She hadn't planned to witness it. She'd been in the Corsetti mansion's library, memorizing the family tree like her life depended on it, because it literally did, when voices drifted through the half-open window. You can't be serious. Veronica's voice was beautiful, even in anguish. Rose hated that she noticed. The wedding is in 3 days. Stefano's voice was flat, controlled. This ends now. You said she was just a business arrangement. You said nothing would change between us. I was wrong. Rose moved closer to the window hidden behind heavy curtains. She knew she shouldn't watch. She watched anyway. They stood in the garden, the same garden where she and Stefano had formed their alliance. Veronica was even more stunning up close than at the galas. Dark hair cascading down her back, a body that curved in all the right places, and tears streaming down her perfect face. Is it her? Veronica grabbed Stefano's arm. Did she make you do this? Rose has nothing to do with this decision. Liar, Rose thought. But she appreciated the lie. Then why? We've been together for 3 years, Stefano. 3 years. And you're throwing it away for some arranged marriage to a girl who doesn't even... Careful. The warning in his voice made Rose's skin prickle. That girl will be my wife. You will speak of her with respect. Veronica recoiled like she'd been slapped. You're defending her. You've never even had a conversation with her. And you're defending her. I've had several conversations with her, actually. Stefano removed Veronica's hand from his arm, gently but firmly. And I've learned that she's observant, intelligent, and brave enough to challenge my mother to her face. She's exactly what this family needs. Rose felt something warm bloom in her chest. She crushed it immediately. He's performing, she reminded herself. This is strategy, not affection. But Veronica didn't see strategy. She saw betrayal. I gave you everything. Her voice cracked. I waited for you through every late night, every disappeared weekend, every time you came home with blood on your hands. And this is how you repay me? I never promised you forever, Veronica. I was clear about that from the beginning. You said you loved me. Silence. Rose held her breath. I said I cared for you. Stefano finally replied. And I did. I do. But this... He gestured between them. This was never going to be permanent. We both knew that. Veronica laughed. A bitter, broken sound. No, you knew that. I was stupid enough to hope. She reached up and unclasped the necklace at her throat, a ruby pendant that Rose recognized from a dozen galas. Take it back. She pressed it into his hands. I don't want anything from you. Veronica, don't. She stepped back, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Don't pretend you feel guilty. Men like you don't feel guilt. You just feel inconvenience. She walked away without looking back. Stefano stood alone in the garden, the ruby pendant glinting in his palm, and then he looked up, directly at Rose's window. Enjoying the show? He found her in the library 10 minutes later. Rose didn't bother pretending she hadn't been watching. You ended it publicly. Like I asked. Like you demanded. He tossed the ruby pendant onto the desk between them. Satisfied? Rose looked at the necklace. At him. At the rigid set of his shoulders and the carefully blank expression on his face. You actually cared about her. Is that so surprising? Honestly? Yes. She leaned back in her chair. I assumed she was just convenient. She was convenient. Stefano moved to the window, staring out at the garden where Veronica had stood moments ago. She was also kind, patient, understanding in ways I didn't deserve. Then why end it? He turned to face her. Because you were right. An alliance requires trust, and trust requires honesty. He paused. You gave me an ultimatum. I could have lied. Said I ended it and kept seeing her in secret. Could you have? Easily. Then why didn't you? Stefano was quiet for a long moment. Because when the Vasilyevs come, and they will come, I need to know you'll stand beside me. Not because of a contract. Because you believe I'm worth standing beside. Rose felt the weight of his words settle over her. That's surprisingly human of you. Don't get used to it. I wouldn't dream of it. She stood walking toward him. But since we're being honest, thank you. For doing it publicly. For not making me look like a fool. You're not a fool, Rose. His dark eyes held hers. You're the most formidable woman I've met since my mother. Is that a compliment? It's a warning. My mother destroys everyone who underestimates her. Good thing I'm on her side then. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. The rehearsal dinner is tomorrow night. The entire organization will be there. Allies, associates, people who will be watching every interaction between us. Looking for weakness. Looking for anything they can exploit. He stepped closer. We need to be convincing, Rose. Not just civil. Convincing. They need to believe this marriage is real. And how do you suggest we do that? He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Rose froze. Like that, he said quietly. Small touches, comfortable proximity. The kind of intimacy that comes from genuine connection. Her heart was beating too fast. She ignored it. You want me to pretend to be in love with you. I want you to pretend you could be. Eventually. And you'll do the same? His hand dropped to his side. I'll do whatever's necessary to keep this family safe. Even if that means convincing a room full of killers that I've fallen for my arranged bride. Rose searched his face for mockery. Found none. Then we practice. His eyebrow rose. Practice. If we're going to be convincing tomorrow, we need to work out the details now. How do we stand together? How do we touch? What's our story? She crossed her arms. Unless you want to improvise in front of people who can spot a lie from across the room. Stefano studied her for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Dance with me. There's no music. There will be tomorrow. And if you step on my feet in front of Marco Vasiliev, he'll know immediately that we're strangers playing pretend. Rose took his hand. His fingers closed around hers. Warm. Calloused. Stronger than she'd expected. I don't know how to follow, she admitted. Then I'll teach you. He pulled her closer, one hand on her waist, the other holding hers against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat through the fabric of his shirt. The man leads, he said. The woman trusts. I don't trust anyone. Then pretend. His grip tightened slightly. Just for tonight. They moved together in silence. No music, no witnesses. Just the whisper of their feet on the hardwood floor and the fading light through the windows. You're better than I expected, Stefano murmured. At dancing? At adapting. His thumb traced a small circle on her waist. Most people in your position would have crumbled by now. Most people in my position didn't spend their childhood learning to survive their father's world. Rose met his eyes. I was never soft, Stefano. I just let people think I was. Why? Because soft women get ignored. And ignored women hear everything. His lips curved. Just barely. You would have made a good spy. Maybe I still will. For you. The words hung between them, heavier than she'd intended. Stefano stopped dancing. Be careful what you offer, Rose. I might take you up on it. Would that be so bad? He released her waist, stepped back, put distance between them that felt colder than it should. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be long. He walked out without looking back. Rose stood alone in the library, her hand still warm where he'd held it. This is strategy, she reminded herself again, just strategy. But her racing heart disagreed. That night she dreamed of dancing with a man covered in blood, and she didn't run away. The Grand Bellamy Hotel had hosted presidents, foreign dignitaries, and once, rumor had it, a secret meeting between 3 intelligence agencies. Tonight, it hosted something far more dangerous. Rose stood at the entrance of the ballroom, Stefano's hand warm on the small of her back, and counted the ways she could die in this room. The man by the ice sculpture, gun holstered under his left arm. The woman in red near the orchestra, knife strapped to her thigh. Rose had seen the outline when she'd bent to adjust her heel. The 4 men positioned at each corner. Not waiters. Definitely not waiters. "Breathe," Stefano murmured against her ear. "You look like you're planning an assassination. I'm planning how to survive one." His fingers pressed slightly harder against her back. A warning or reassurance. She couldn't tell. "Stay close to me. Smile. And whatever happens, don't show fear." "I don't feel fear." "Good. Then this should be easy." It wasn't easy. The first hour was a blur of introductions. Underbosses from Philadelphia, associates from Boston, a terrifyingly polite woman from Miami who controlled half the ports on the eastern seaboard, and complimented Rose's dress with the same tone she probably used to order executions. Rose smiled until her face ached. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny. She let Stefano's hand rest on her waist, her shoulder, the curve of her hip. Each touch a performance, each glance a carefully crafted lie. And through it all, she felt eyes watching, not the curious gazes of Corsetti allies assessing the new bride. Something colder, more calculating. "They're here," she whispered to Stefano during a rare moment alone by the bar. "Who?" "I don't know yet. But someone in this room wants us dead." Stefano's expression didn't change. He simply lifted his champagne glass and took a slow sip. Northeast corner. Gray suit, silver tie. Rose didn't turn. Instead, she laughed as if he'd said something charming and leaned into him, using the movement to glance casually across the room. The man in the gray suit was watching them with pale blue eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. "Dmitry Vasilyev," Stefano said quietly. "Victor's youngest son. He wasn't on the guest list. He crashed the rehearsal dinner of the most powerful mafia family in New York. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. With the Vasilyevs, it's usually both." Rose studied Dmitry from beneath her lashes. Mid-20s, handsome in a sharp, dangerous way, and looking at her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. "He's coming over." "I know. Stefano, trust me." The words landed differently now than they would have a week ago. Rose straightened her spine and smiled. Stefano Corsetti. Dmitry's accent was subtle, Russian softened by years of American boarding schools. "I don't believe I received an invitation to this lovely gathering." "That's because you weren't invited." Stefano's voice was pleasant. His eyes were not. "And yet here you are. I heard there was a celebration. A wedding." Dmitry's gaze slid to Rose. "I had to see the bride for myself." Rose felt the assessment in his stare, not sexual but clinical. He was cataloging her weaknesses, searching for fractures he could exploit. She extended her hand. "Rose Montgomery. And you are?" Dmitry took her hand and raised it to his lips. The kiss lingered a beat too long. "Dmitry Vasilyev, an old friend of the family. Funny, Stefano's never mentioned you. Stefano and I have a complicated history." Dmitry's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Our fathers built empires side by side, before they became competitors." "Before your father tried to have mine killed," Stefano corrected flatly. "Twice. Ancient history." Dmitry waved a dismissive hand. "I'm here to propose a truce. A new chapter. Surely this wedding is proof that old alliances can be remade. This wedding has nothing to do with you, doesn't it?" Dmitry's pale eyes fixed on Rose. "The Montgomery fortune, the Corsetti power, united through marriage. It's quite the strategic move. One might even call it desperate." Rose felt Stefano tense beside her. The hand on her waist tightened. She stepped forward before he could respond. "Desperate?" She tilted her head, her smile sharp. "That's an interesting word choice from a man who wasn't invited to a party and showed up anyway. In my experience, that's what desperation actually looks like." Dmitry's expression flickered, just for a moment. "The bride has teeth. The bride has a lot of things." Rose held his stare, including a very clear understanding of who belongs at this party and who doesn't. "So unless you have a gift to offer, and I mean an actual gift, not veiled threats dressed up as diplomacy, I suggest you enjoy one drink and then find the exit." Silence stretched between them. Then Dmitry laughed. a genuine sound that somehow made him more dangerous, not less. I see why he chose you. He looked at Stefano with something almost like respect. She's not what I expected. She rarely is. Dimitri reached into his jacket. 4 of Stefano's men immediately moved closer. Relax. He withdrew a small velvet box. A wedding gift. From my family to yours. He placed it in Rose's hand. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. For now. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd as smoothly as he'd appeared. Rose stared at the box. Should I open it? Not here. Stefano's jaw was tight. Not now. Is it going to explode? Unlikely. The Vasilyevs prefer their messages to be symbolic. Rose tucked the box into her clutch, her heart pounding despite her outward calm. What just happened? You just made an enemy, Rose. A very dangerous one. I thought we were already enemies. We were. Stefano looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. But now it's personal. They danced 3 times that night. Each time, Rose felt the eyes of the room following them. Allies measuring. Enemies plotting. And somewhere in the shadows, Dmitri Vasilyev watching with those cold, calculating eyes. You shouldn't have challenged him, Stefano murmured during the 3rd dance. Someone needed to. That someone didn't need to be you. Why? Because I'm the delicate bride who should smile and stay silent? Because now he knows you're a threat. And Dmitri doesn't ignore threats. He eliminates them. Rose's steps faltered. Stefano caught her effortlessly, pulling her closer to cover the stumble. You're scared, she whispered. I'm realistic. His breath was warm against her temple. The Vasilyevs have been looking for leverage against my family for years. Tonight you painted a target on your back. I was already a target. The marriage made sure of that. The marriage made you valuable. Tonight made you interesting. His hand pressed harder against her spine. There's a difference. Then teach me. He pulled back slightly, searching her face. Teach you what? How to survive this world. How to be more than just the bride everyone underestimates. Rose held his gaze. You said your mother destroys everyone who underestimates her. Teach me to be like her. Something shifted in Stefano's expression. The practiced blankness cracked, revealing something raw beneath. You don't know what you're asking. I know exactly what I'm asking. Rose leaned closer, her lips nearly brushing his ear. I'm asking you to make me dangerous. The music swelled around them. Stefano didn't respond for a long moment. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. Tomorrow, after the wedding, we start. Later that night, alone in her room at the mansion, Rose opened Dimitri's gift. Inside the velvet box was a single chess piece, a white queen, and beneath it a note in elegant handwriting. The game has begun, Mrs. Corsetti. I look forward to watching you play. Rose stared at the queen for a long time. Then she set it on her nightstand facing the door. Watch me, she thought. I'll show you exactly how a queen moves. Rose Montgomery became Rose Corsetti on a Saturday afternoon, surrounded by 300 guests, 40 armed guards, and 1 white chess queen tucked into her bouquet. A reminder, a promise, a declaration of war. The dress was a masterpiece. Hand-sewn Italian lace that had taken 6 seamstresses 4 months to complete. It had been chosen by Elisabetta, approved by Stefano, and fitted to Rose's body like armor made of silk. She felt like a princess walking to her execution. You look terrified. Gianna appeared beside her in the bridal suite, stunning in deep burgundy. Her dark hair swept into an elegant updo. I look bridal. You look like you're about to face a firing squad. Gianna handed her a glass of champagne. Drink. It helps. Does it? No, but it's tradition to lie to brides. Rose laughed despite herself. In the 2 weeks since they'd met, Gianna had become something unexpected. Not quite a friend, but close. An ally in a house full of strangers. Your brother is going to hate this dress. My brother is going to swallow his tongue when he sees you in this dress. Gianna grinned. Which is exactly why I helped Mother choose it. You wanted him to suffer? I wanted him to remember that he's marrying a woman, not a business contract. Gianna's expression softened. Stefano has spent his whole life treating everything like a transaction. Maybe you'll teach him that some things can't be bought. Rose looked at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, polished, perfect, and utterly unrecognizable. And if I can't, then at least you'll look incredible while failing. Gianna squeezed her shoulder. It's time. The ceremony was held in the Corsetti estate's private chapel, a building older than the country itself, imported stone by stone from a monastery in Tuscany. Rose walked down the aisle alone. Her father had offered. She'd refused. Richard Montgomery had sold her to pay his debts. He didn't get to pretend this was a loving gesture. 300 faces watched her approach the altar. Allies, enemies, strangers who would judge her every step, every breath, every flicker of emotion. She gave them nothing. And then she saw Stefano. He stood at the altar in a black suit that made him look like sin incarnate. The tattoo on his neck was visible above his collar. A deliberate choice, she realized. A reminder to everyone present that the man they were watching was not civilized no matter how elegant his clothing. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark, intense, and for the first time since she'd met him, completely unguarded. He was looking at her like she was something he hadn't expected to find. Something precious. Something that scared him. Rose's heart stuttered. It's an act, she reminded herself. We're performing for the crowd. But when she reached the altar and he took her hand, his fingers trembled. Just once. Just barely. And she knew, with a certainty that terrified her, that this wasn't entirely an act anymore. The ceremony passed in a blur of Latin phrases and ancient vows. Rose spoke the words she'd memorized. Stefano spoke his. Rings were exchanged. His a simple platinum band, hers an antique diamond that had belonged to 4 generations of Corsetti brides. And then the officiant said the words that changed everything. You may kiss the bride. Stefano turned to face her. His hand came up to cup her jaw. Gentle, achingly gentle, so different from the cold efficiency she'd expected. Breathe, he murmured, echoing his words from the rehearsal dinner. I am breathing. No, you're holding your breath. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You're safe, Rose. I've got you. And then he kissed her. It wasn't the chaste, performative kiss she'd prepared for. It wasn't the cold transaction of a business arrangement sealed with lips. It was soft, slow, a question rather than a statement. Is this okay? Are we okay? Can we be something more than what they made us? Rose didn't know the answer, but she kissed him back. The reception was held in the mansion's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, a 12-piece orchestra, enough flowers to fill a botanical garden, and security tight enough to stop a small army, which, as it turned out, was necessary. We have a problem. Marco appeared at Stefano's side during their first dance, his voice pitched low enough that only the 3 of them could hear. What kind of problem? The Vasilyev kind. 6 vehicles approaching the east gate. They're not slowing down. Rose felt Stefano's hand tighten on her waist. His expression didn't change. Still the devoted groom, still the picture of happiness, but his voice was steel. How many men? Unknown, but they're armed. Evacuate the guests through the west wing. Quietly. Tell Gianna to get Mother and Rose to the safe room. No. Both men looked at her. Rose kept dancing, kept smiling, kept performing even as her heart raced. I'm not hiding in a safe room while my wedding turns into a war zone. Rose, you wanted me to be more than a decorative bride. You promised to teach me. This is lesson 1. She met his eyes. I stay. I fight. Or this alliance means nothing. Stefano stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Marco, get her a gun. The attack came 20 minutes later. Rose had been moved to the library, not a safe room, but a defensible position with multiple exits. Gianna was with her, along with 3 of Stefano's most trusted men, and a Glock 19 that felt surprisingly natural in her hands. Have you ever fired a weapon? Gianna asked, checking her own gun with practiced efficiency. My father taught me when I was 16. He said a Montgomery woman should know how to protect herself. Did he also teach you to protect yourself from Vasilyev assassins? No, that was more of an on-the-job learning situation. The sound of gunfire erupted from somewhere in the mansion. Rose's grip tightened on the Glock. Where's Stefano? Handling it. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Gianna moved to the window, peering through a crack in the curtains. 3 vehicles breached the gate. Our men intercepted most of them, but the library door exploded inward. 2 men in black tactical gear burst through, guns raised. Rose didn't think. She fired. The first shot went wide. The second caught the lead attacker in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. Gianna's shot was cleaner. Center mass, instant drop. The second attacker swung toward Rose. Time slowed. She saw the muzzle of his gun rising, saw his finger tightening on the trigger, saw her own death reflected in his cold, empty eyes. And then Stefano was there. He came through the shattered doorway like a force of nature, faster than should have been possible, more violent than she'd imagined. His hand caught the attacker's gun, twisted, and suddenly the man was on his knees with his own weapon pressed against his temple. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood. "Go to hell. After you." The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Rose flinched. Couldn't help it. Couldn't stop herself from staring at the body crumpling to the floor, at the blood spreading across the antique carpet, at the man she'd just married standing over a corpse like it meant nothing. Stefano turned to her. His face was spattered with blood. His suit was ruined, and his eyes, those dark, unreadable eyes, were searching hers with something that looked almost like fear. "Rose." She couldn't speak. "Rose." He stepped closer. "Look at me." Not at him. At me. She dragged her gaze to his face. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Good." He reached for her, then stopped, looking down at his blood-covered hands. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to see this. I'm sorry this is your wedding day. I'm sorry." "Don't." He fell silent. Rose took a breath, then another, forced her heart to slow, her hands to stop shaking, her mind to focus. "Is it over?" "Yes. The others have been neutralized." "Neutralized?" She tested the word. "That's a nice way of saying killed. It's the only way to say it that doesn't make you look at me like I'm a monster." Rose studied him, the blood on his face, the gun still smoking in his hand, the bodies at his feet, and she made a choice. "You're not a monster, Stefano. You're a man who does monstrous things to protect what's his." She stepped forward and took his bloody hand in hers. "Tonight you protected me. That's all that matters." Something broke in his expression. The mask he'd worn since the moment she'd met him cracked, revealing the exhausted, frightened, desperately human man beneath. "You should run," he whispered. "You should take whatever money you can find and disappear. I could help you. Hide you somewhere the Vasilyevs would never find you. Is that what you want?" "I want you to be safe." "That's not what I asked." Rose squeezed his hand. "What do you want, Stefano?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. "I want you to stay," he breathed against her hair. "God help me. I want you to stay." Rose closed her eyes. "Then I stay." Later, after the bodies were removed, the guests reassured, the blood cleaned from the floor, Stefano found her on the balcony of the master suite. Their suite now. "The Vasilyevs sent a message with the attack," he said quietly. "Dmitri wanted us to know this was just the beginning, the chess queen, the opening move." He stood beside her, looking out at the moonlit gardens. "He'll come again. Harder. More personal. Then we'll be ready." Stefano turned to face her. In the moonlight, with the blood washed away and the chaos behind them, he looked almost peaceful. "You shot a man tonight. I grazed him. Gianna did the real work. You pulled the trigger. Without hesitation." Rose met his eyes. "You told me this world requires doing what needs to be done. I did what needed to be done. And how do you feel?" She considered the question honestly. "Alive, terrified, and angry that someone tried to kill me on my wedding day." She managed a small smile, also slightly disappointed that we never got to cut the cake. Stefano laughed, a real laugh, startled and genuine and so unexpected that Rose felt her heart flip. "I'll have them bring the cake tomorrow. Promise?" "Promise." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're remarkable, Rose Corsetti." Rose Corsetti. Her new name, her new identity, her new life. "Ask me again," she said quietly. "Ask you what?" "What you asked in the library. About running." His hand stilled against her cheek. "Do you want to run?" Rose leaned into his touch. "No, I want to stay. I want to fight. And I want to make Dmitri Vasilyev regret ever sending me that chess queen." Stefano's eyes darkened. "That's my wife." He kissed her again, and this time neither of them pretended it was just for show. 3 weeks after the wedding, Rose Corsetti killed her first man. Not grazed, not wounded. Killed. She didn't feel guilty about it. That probably should have worried her more than it did. The trap was Stefano's idea. The bait was hers. "Absolutely not." Stefano's voice was ice. "You're not putting yourself in danger. I'm already in danger. We both are." Rose spread the intelligence reports across his desk. "Dmitri has moles in our organization. 3, maybe 4. We don't know who they are, but they know everything. Our shipments, our safe houses, our schedules. Which is why you should be in the panic room, not planning operations. The panic room won't save me if someone inside this house is feeding information to the Vasilyevs." Rose met his eyes. "We need to flush them out. And to do that, we need bait they can't resist. And you think that bait is you. I know it is." She pulled out Dmitri's note. the one that had come with the chess queen. He's obsessed with me. The woman who talked back. The bride with teeth. If he thinks he can get to me, he'll take the shot. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Rose walked around the desk and took his hands in hers. 3 weeks of marriage, and she still wasn't used to touching him casually. Still felt electricity every time. Stefano, you promised to teach me to be dangerous. This is me being dangerous. This is you being reckless. It's the same thing. He stared at her for a long moment. She watched the battle play out behind his eyes, the protective instinct warring with the strategic mind, the husband fighting the dawn. Finally, he exhaled. Tell me the plan. The plan was simple. Leak false information about Rose attending a charity gala alone while Stefano handled business in Chicago. Make it look like a rare opportunity. The new bride, unprotected, vulnerable. An invitation Dmitri couldn't refuse. What Dmitri didn't know was that Stefano wasn't in Chicago. He was in the building across from the gala, with 20 of his best men watching every entrance and exit. What he also didn't know was that Rose had spent 3 weeks training, hand-to-hand combat with Marco, weapons training with Gianna, strategy sessions with Elisabetta herself, who turned out to be far more dangerous than anyone gave her credit for. My mother taught me to shoot when I was 12, Elisabetta had said during one of their lessons. She also taught me that the most powerful weapon a woman has is being underestimated. Use it. Rose intended to. The gala was in full swing when Dmitri made his move. She'd been expecting something subtle, a poisoned drink, a discreet kidnapping, something that matched his chessmaster persona. Instead, he walked straight up to her in the middle of the ballroom. Mrs. Corsetti. His smile was charming. His eyes were empty. Dancing alone tonight? My husband had business. So I heard. He extended his hand. May I? Rose took his hand. They moved onto the dance floor and she felt the room shift around them. Dimitri's men positioning, her men countering. A silent war being waged while the orchestra played Strauss. You're not afraid of me, Dmitri observed. Should I be? Most people are. I'm not most people. His grip tightened. No, you're not. That's why I find you so fascinating. Fascinating enough to attack my wedding? That was business. Tonight is personal. He spun her elegantly, pulling her closer than propriety allowed. I'm going to make you an offer, Rose. One time only. I'm listening. Come with me. Willingly. I'll spare your husband, your family, everyone you care about. His lips brushed her ear. I'll even let you keep the Montgomery fortune. And in exchange, you become mine. My trophy. My prize. His hand slid lower on her back. My queen. Rose let him hold her. Let him think she was considering it. Then she smiled. Counteroffer. I'm listening. You let go of me in the next 3 seconds or you don't leave this building alive. Dmitri laughed. You're bluffing. Your husband isn't here. My men have every exit covered. You have nothing. 1. Rose. 2. This is ridiculous. 3. The lights went out. Rose had trained for this moment, had practiced fighting in darkness until she could navigate by sound alone. Dmitri hadn't. She twisted out of his grip, dropped low and swept his legs out from under him. He hit the ground hard and she was on top of him before he could recover. One knee on his chest, one hand pinning his wrist. The knife she'd hidden in her garter pressed against his throat. Here's the thing about chess, Dmitri. Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. You were so busy watching the queen you forgot about the pawns. Around them, she could hear the sounds of Stefano's men neutralizing the Vasiliev forces. Controlled chaos. Professional violence. The Corsetti machine operating exactly as designed. You won't kill me. Dmitri's voice was strained but confident. You don't have it in you. You attacked my wedding, threatened my family, and put your hands on me without permission. Rose pressed the blade harder, drawing a thin line of blood. Want to bet your life on what I have in me? For the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. My father will destroy you. He'll burn everything the Corsettis have built. Your father is currently being arrested by federal agents. Stefano made a deal. She leaned closer. 20 years of evidence in exchange for immunity. The Vasiliev empire falls tonight. And you? You're the last loose end. The lights came back on. Stefano stood 3 feet away, gun drawn, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Rose, his voice was quiet. You don't have to do this. I know. We can take him alive. Hand him over to the feds. Let the system handle him. The system let his family terrorize ours for decades. Rose looked down at Dmitri. The system doesn't work for people like us. If you do this, you can't take it back. You'll carry it forever. Rose met Stefano's eyes. I know. She saw understanding there, acceptance, and something deeper, respect for the choice she was making even as he gave her every opportunity to make a different one. This was what he'd been teaching her all along, not just how to fight, how to choose, how to own the consequences of those choices. Rose looked back at Dmitri. Any last words? Go to hell. Ladies first. She drew the blade across his throat. Stefano found her afterward, standing on the balcony of their suite, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. He didn't speak, just stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I thought I'd feel different, she said finally. Heavier, darker, and I feel free. She turned to face him. Is that wrong? It's honest. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, that gesture that had become theirs. The first one is always the hardest. After that, it gets easier, it gets clearer. You learn to carry it without letting it carry you. Rose leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her. Solid, warm, home. Your mother said something to me once, that Corsettis don't run, don't break, and don't betray. She says that to everyone. She also said something else, just to me. Rose pulled back to look at him. She said that Corsetti women don't just survive their husband's world, they rule it. Stefano's lips curved. My mother has a lot of opinions. She also has excellent taste. Rose smiled. She chose my wedding dress, after all. That dress. His eyes darkened with memory. I still haven't recovered. Good. You're not supposed to. He kissed her then, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that promised a lifetime of more. I love you, Rose Corsetti. The words hit her like a wave. She'd known, had felt it in every touch, every glance, every moment he'd chosen her over easier paths. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real. I love you too. She laughed, surprised by her own tears. God help me. I actually love you. God has nothing to do with it. He wiped her tears with his thumb. This is all us. 1 year later, the Montgomery-Corsetti merger was officially the most successful business integration in East Coast history. Unofficially, it was the beginning of an empire. Rose stood at the window of the new corporate headquarters, a gleaming tower in Manhattan that housed both the legitimate businesses and the shadow operations that funded them. She was 30 weeks pregnant, exhausted, and absolutely refusing to slow down. You're supposed to be resting. Gianna appeared with a cup of decaf coffee, which Rose accepted gratefully. I'll rest when the quarterly reports are finished. You'll rest when the baby decides to come 3 weeks early because her mother won't sit down. Gianna settled into the chair across from her. Stefano is going to kill me for letting you work this late. Stefano can take it up with me directly. Take what up with you directly? Stefano walked in, looking exactly as devastating as he had a year ago. More, actually. Marriage agreed with him. The permanent crease of worry between his brows had softened, and he smiled more often, usually at her. Your sister is being dramatic, Rose said. My sister is being accurate. He crossed to her, dropping a kiss on her forehead before crouching to address her belly. Hello, little one. Your mother is being difficult again. Your mother is building an empire for you to inherit, Rose corrected. Show some respect. The baby kicked in response. Stefano's face lit up. She agrees with me. She has gas. She has excellent instincts. He stood, pulling Rose gently to her feet. Come home. Dinner is waiting. Marco has a security update that can wait until tomorrow, and my mother has sent approximately 14 texts asking when she can start decorating the nursery. She already decorated the nursery. She wants to decorate it again. Rose laughed despite herself. Elisabetta had embraced the role of grandmother-to-be with terrifying enthusiasm. The nursery currently looked like a designer baby catalog had exploded inside it. Fine. But I want the reports on my desk by 7 tomorrow. 6:30, Stefano promised. I'll have them there myself. They walked out together, his hand warm on her lower back, that familiar touch that still sent electricity through her veins. In the lobby, they passed a large portrait that had been installed last month. Rose and Stefano at their wedding reception, moments before the attack. They looked happy, hopeful, completely unaware of the chaos about to descend. Rose preferred the people they'd become after. Do you ever regret it? She asked as they stepped into the waiting car. Regret what? The marriage, the arrangement, all of it. Stefano looked at her like she'd suggested the sky was green. Rose, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You've made me a better leader, a better man, a better human being. You've given me a family, a future, and a reason to come home every night. He took her hand, pressing a kiss to her wedding ring. I would marry you again tomorrow and the day after that, and every day for the rest of our lives. Rose blinked back tears. Hormones. She blamed the hormones. That was very romantic. I've been practicing. It shows. He grinned. That rare, genuine grin that was reserved only for her. I love you, Mrs. Corsetti. Rose leaned into him, feeling their daughter kick between them, feeling the future stretching out like a promise. I love you too, Mr. Corsetti. The car pulled away from the tower, carrying them toward home, toward family, toward the life they'd built from the ashes of an arrangement neither of them had wanted. On Rose's desk, the white chess queen sat exactly where it had been for a year, a reminder of the game she'd won, a trophy from the war she'd ended, a symbol of the woman she'd become. Rose Corsetti, wife, mother, queen. The heir who hated her had become the man who loved her, and she, the girl who'd been sold to pay her father's debts, had become the most powerful woman in New York. Not bad for a forced marriage. Not bad at all. The end.